Welcome to Next Level Play Therapy, a weekly podcast dedicated to supporting the next generation of child and adolescent therapists to provide exceptional play therapy services. We'll explore all things play therapy to elevate your work with children and adolescents using the therapeutic powers of play. I'll discuss practical tips and ideas so you can provide a transformative experience for your young clients and make a real difference in their lives. So get ready to take your play therapy skills to the next level and make a lasting impact in the lives of children, adolescents, and families. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy, where I talk about all things play therapy and expressive arts and help you make a difference in the lives of your child and adolescent clients. So today I want to talk about some things that I notice play therapists struggle with. And a lot of the questions I get asked, especially in Play Therapy Academy, which is my online play therapy consultation program, where we meet weekly and there are courses in the program to help you get some really foundational skills and take your clinical decision-making process to the next level. And the way that I look at it is, if I can help you with the way in which you use your clinical decision making, so you think about the clinical issues, you figure out what's going on, you use that information to then figure out what you need to do. And to me, if I can help you learn that decision making process, then you're gold. You've got an amazing foundation to continue building on your play therapy knowledge and expertise. And that's a lot of what I like to focus on here in this weekly podcast and live stream. And we do a lot of this in Play Therapy Academy. And I'll talk a little bit more about Play Therapy Academy if you're interested at the end, because I do have openings. I don't expect them to last long. And so today's episode has a lot to do with some of these core skills of navigating the questions of how do I help my client and what should I do? And these are a lot of the questions. Even if you're an experienced play therapist and you've been doing it for a while, at some point you're going to come up to something where you may or may not necessarily know what to do. You may be a little stumped, or sometimes we just need to seek out consultation just to get a different perspective, to look at it differently, to maybe even get a second opinion on what we think is going on. And there are things, if you've ever done this, and we do this a lot in Play Therapy Academy, but one of the things that you're going to do is you're going to give a little synopsis to the person that you're consulting with. Why is that? Because that person needs a little information in order to help you figure out what's going on and what should you do. And at the essence of that summary is your case conceptualization and your treatment planning. These are two separate and connected processes. Case conceptualization is basically what's going on with your client and why is it happening? What are the patterns that are sustaining it? And then your treatment planning takes that information and then you figure out what to do. And what I find is a lot of play therapists want to just jump right into working with their client. And I know some of even the more process-oriented play therapy models will say, you don't really need a diagnosis. You don't really need any of that. We don't want to label. And I get that. I totally get that. And there are strategic and kind of more technical aspects to figuring out what's going on with your clients. So I don't really agree that you just jump right in and you don't need to kind of figure it out. You'll just figure it out as you go along. Sometimes that will work. And the more experienced you are, the more knowledge that you've accumulated over the years. Or like me, I've been in the child and adolescent mental health field for about 30 years now. So, and prior to that, I was a special education teacher and I worked with children who had emotional problems. So I can kind of go back to some of those things as well. The reality is, though, in order, even for experienced people, I think it's important to develop these more technical skills. The concern is always, can I balance these technical skills with relationship? Like if I'm gathering all the information, I'm asking all the questions, I'm not really connecting with my client and I'm not establishing rapport. And I disagree with that. I think the way you do it is important. The way you ask the questions is important. How do you go about connecting with your clients? So, is it possible to build therapeutic rapport while you're also asking all the questions, especially in the beginning? And I think the answer is yes. And so that's what I want to talk about today. And one of the things that I like to do, and I do this with all my trainings, I do this with Play Therapy Academy, the people that I consult with, they'll tell you that I nerd out all the time, and I will go back to see what the research says, what we're finding in this time. So I think it's important to use a theoretical model because your theory dictates your application. So theory for play therapy, your play therapy theory is how your clients are going to access those therapeutic powers of play. And you do that within a strong therapeutic relationship. So to me, it's important, one, use your theory model. Two, make sure you know what the current literature is saying, what's the research saying. And three, wrap all of that up within a really strong therapeutic relationship and you are golden. So whenever I'm working on, whenever I'm working on courses and I'm developing courses, I like to go and see what the research says. And I usually go down these long rabbit holes for a while and I come up with like tons of research articles. And that's what today's episode is. I found this really interesting article in the professional literature. This was in the Journal of Psychotherapy Integration, and this was published in 2021. And there were three mental health professionals, and they were looking at the case conceptualization and treatment planning. And can you balance those two with relationship and make sure you're individualizing your client's treatment approach? And they had some really interesting things in the article that I wanted to share with you today. Some things to think about. There were some really good things in here. There's a ton in the article. I posted the citation for the article in the description. So if you have access to a professional research library, like through a university or something, or you want to go to that journal and purchase the article, then the citation is listed in the description. So you can check that out. So for those of you joining me live today, I would love to see who's here. Post your name in the comments. What population do you work with? Where do you work? And If you have questions or you want to comment, please, that's one of the benefits of watching during the live stream. For those of you who are watching on the live stream replay, feel free to go ahead and post questions in the comments. Post your name, where you're from, in the comments. For those of you listening on the podcast, because this also is in a podcast, Next Level Play Therapy podcast, feel free to make comments. And the only thing that I ask is, because it's a public forum, just don't post specific client information, because it's not private, it's public. But if you have, there are a lot of questions or issues that come up that are mostly kind of across the board, pretty typical things that come up that tend to stump us or that we experience. So feel free to post those in the comments. And I'm Cathi Spooner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm here in the United States, and I have been in the child and adolescent field for over 30 years now. And one of the things that I really, at this point in my career, I really enjoy tapping into my teacher parts of me and helping the next generation of play therapists to take your skills to the next level using my 30 years of, plus if you count all my special education experience and what I learned that way, taking that and helping you in your professional journey. So let's get started for today. And today what we're really talking about is how to balance case conceptualization, treatment planning, and therapeutic relationship in play therapy. And what are some things to consider that we can glean from this research article? Although this is more of an article, it's not a study. It still has some really, really good information in it. It's predominantly geared toward adults. And I guess they have this model that they've developed, and they've researched this model on children, adolescents, and adults. And they found that the model is effective with children as well. I didn't get a chance to go down the rabbit hole. I like to look at what the other articles that are cited, and then I like to go look at those. I just haven't had a chance to go down that rabbit hole yet. And I will, because I'm really, really curious about those professional articles, so research studies on using this particular model with children. So, what's the best way to help children heal? One of the things, like I get asked all the time, is how do I help my clients? It doesn't seem to be working. I'm not sure. I'm really frustrated. I don't know what's going on. And then we kind of get frustrated with clients. We get frustrated with parents. And then at that point, it's kind of a good idea to step back and take a look at what's really going on. And I've also noticed that play therapists tend to struggle with this whole concept of case conceptualization and treatment planning. And there's a lot of conflicting information. Like I mentioned, I've gone through and I've read on I like to keep up on different play therapy models, especially what the Association for Play Therapy considers kind of foundational models, especially since I'm working with people who in Play Therapy Academy who want to use a different theory model. So I like to keep up on those. And so I do a lot of readings. I'll do different trainings as well. And one of the things that I've heard is sometimes, like some of the theory models, you'll hear the professionals say, oh, you don't need to do that case conceptual, that like the diagnosis or the case conceptualization or treatment planning. It's more process-oriented. Therapeutic rapport is the main thing. And then you have those other ones that are very structured, very intervention focused on the symptoms. And that's one of the reasons I found this article interesting, is that they looked at those, they looked at, do we have to go it's either all like the psychodynamic or humanistic, where it's relational and process and kind of free flowing, or do we want to go with those more structured interventions that are symptom focused? And the authors are really proposing to take more of an individualized approach with your clients. And what they did is they created this model that will help you go through that process of figuring out goals and any obstacles along the way. So really kind of your treatment planning and case conceptualization process to make sure that the type of approach you're using with your clients is more geared towards your clients. So that's a lot of what the article focused on. And I felt it was relevant for play therapists, because I find that one of the things that is really confusing for play therapists, especially in the beginning, is there's so much conflicting information. And I don't tend to think it's an all or nothing, black and white kind of binary way of thinking about how to help your clients. What I do believe is important is you ground your approach in a theoretical model, because that's how your clients will access those therapeutic powers of play, even when you're using more of an integrated approach. Like prescriptive play therapy is an integrated approach, and it's also grounded in principles and how you apply prescriptive play therapy. So if we look at this article, so I'm going to give you a little summary of what the article was about. So the authors propose a client-specific model for case conceptualization and treatment planning to make sure that you're meeting each client's needs. So there's a concept, I guess, I don't know if I'd heard about this before. The name made me laugh, so I'm going to share it. So there's this, it's called the Dodo principle, which is basically, doesn't matter what theory model you're using, they'll all equally get the same results for your clients. So just learn a theory model and everything will be fine. And what the authors are proposing is that's not accurate. What works well for one client doesn't always work well for another client. So you really want to think about what your approach is. And in order to do that, what they identified is this specific model for figuring that out. And they call it the plan formulation method. And their method looks at goals. So this is really kind of treatment planning and case conceptualization together, this model. That's kind of how I looked at it. So for those of you who are interested, like if you're hearing me say these big fancy words and you're like, I don't know what she's talking about. Case conceptualization. If you're interested in this, I've done previous episodes to take more of a deeper dive into case conceptualization. I even developed a whole course on case conceptualization and another course on treatment planning. So if you want to hone your skills on that, on either of those or both of those, you can take a look at my website. I'll go over more of that at the end as well. Both of these courses are included in Play Therapy Academy. So, but for those people who don't really need the consultation part of things, then the courses are available for you. So what these authors did is they looked at goals, obstructions, traumas, tests, and core beliefs. And the goals are really about like how your client is defining what the problem is and what do they want to be better. When I'm doing treatment planning and I'm formulating a treatment plan with my clients, I'll usually ask them a question, what do you want to be better and what will that look like? Because what we want to do is we want to engage the client in the treatment goal setting process. That's really, really important to do that. And in the article kind of talks through how to do that a little bit. It doesn't really tell you how to write the goals or things like that, or the objectives. I go over that a lot in my treatment planning course. So what they focus on with the goals is really, and I thought this was really important because especially when you're new to the profession, it's really hard to think about how do you integrate and make sure clients are engaged and participating in that goal setting process. But sometimes what they say doesn't always line up and it's not really realistic. So how do you then make sure you get to the essence of what they need and what they want? And a lot of that is going to, if you haven't done your thorough history taking and gathered lots of detailed information about what's going on and why it's happening, that's what's going to help you figure out your case conceptualization. That it does make it a little harder, in my experience, to figure out goals. That's why it's really important to do that first part. So the first part, one aspect of their model is goals. The other one is what they call obstructions. And these are what they call pathogenic beliefs and schemas. So that sounds really CBT-ish, which is really, what are those distorted thinking patterns or belief systems that can interfere with progress being made? So when you're conceptualizing how to help your clients, you want to conceptualize what might get in the way. What are some of those things that are going on that need to be part of the change process? And then traumas, looking at any of those unresolved traumatic experiences that may come up in the treatment process, what that may possibly look like. And then tests, which is, this is ways in which clients have learned to interact. It's ways in which they've learned to experience the world. And so these will be kind of tests that may come up in the treatment process. So like, basically it's transference and how that might engage some of your countertransference. That's essentially how I kind of conceptualize it. So if your clients have had a lot of trauma, they're not going to really trust, especially if it's kind of attachment trauma, then it's going to be hard for them to be vulnerable and trust because it won't feel safe. So what you may find is the ways in which your clients kind of test that out in the process. And then the final thing were core beliefs. And these were kind of your client's level of awareness of what the actual problem is that they're experiencing. And so really taking, and they kind of walk you through, and the article uses different case examples to kind of walk through what this would look like in practical application, which I thought was really useful. I think case studies help us take like the kind of the theory part of it, and then, all right, what does that look like in real time in practical application? So the purpose of the model really is to move away from that binary or all or nothing thinking of, we're either going to be symptom focused or we're going to use more of that process, humanistic, relational treatment approach. So how does this apply to play therapists, like for you? So the way that I kind of think of it is, play therapy is based on those fundamental principles of using a theoretical model within the context of a strong therapeutic relationship. And that's how your clients are going to access those therapeutic powers of play. That's what sets play therapy apart from other expressive arts modalities, which is your client's ability to access those therapeutic powers of play. And in play therapy, we have a range of theoretical models. We have more structured and symptom focused, like CBT play therapy. We have more directive approaches that are not necessarily strategic, but they are structured. The therapist leads the way, like TheraPlay is much more therapist directed than, say, filial therapy, which is not as directive. The child, you're teaching the parent how to allow the child to lead in those special playtime, relationship building, therapeutic approach with filial. So, and then there are the more integrated approaches like prescriptive play therapy or ecosystemic play therapy. Now in play therapy, we have what I would say we have more like the second generation of theoretical model. So we have those, what Association for Play Therapy calls those seminal and historical theory models. And now with research and play therapy being kind of the go-to approach working with children, and we're getting more people understanding play therapy, getting trained in play therapy, and we have a lot more research, a few decades of neuroscience and attachment theory. So now we're kind of having more second generation, I call them second generation theory models like narrative play therapy, or there's another big one. There's a few out there using more of the like neuroscience approach to play therapy, and people kind of taking information and structuring it in a model and teaching their model for specific issues, which I think is awesome. And it's still going to be based on a theoretical model, how you access the therapeutic powers of play, and wrapped up in a strong therapeutic relationship. And for these models, there are specific stages where you're guiding your clients through those stages or things you're looking for. So we have a lot of different approaches now in play therapy. One of the mistakes that I often see happen, especially in the beginning, is that play therapists will struggle with really learning and being able to stay in their discomfort for learning a new theory and applying it. What does that look like? How do I stay true to the theory model? And what does that look like for each of these clients? Because it's hard to learn something new when you're feeling uncomfortable and worried you're not doing a good job with your clients and you're not helping them. So what'll happen is then sometimes people will then get a little anxious or nervous. Oh, it's not working, or it's not making a difference, or, oh, they're going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing. And then they kind of do a bunch of different approaches. And I call it the throw spaghetti against the wall and hope something sticks, where you're just kind of taking different interventions or different strategies and kind of hoping something works at some point in time. But if you stick with the model, then it will make a difference. And for the purposes of this discussion and this specific topic, what I would encourage is make sure you're actually learning a model. And as you go along, you're going to add, and you get more experience and you've been in the field for longer, you'll probably learn different theory models along the way. And then kind of from there, you can do, I would say, more of a prescriptive play therapy approach, where you're kind of prescriptive matching and you're integrating and matching specifically for each client along the way. The thing is, though, a big thing to keep in mind is you really need to take time at the beginning, that very first session, to gather all the information, ask the questions that are going to help you formulate your case conceptualization, so you have a good idea what's going on and why it's happening. And then that way You're also I love what the authors came up with in terms of, you're engaging clients with the goal. You may have to kind of use your psychosocial and your case conceptualization to kind of help get at a goal that's going to be realistic and achievable, and help them get what they want to accomplish. And then looking at what are some of those things that might cause problems along the way with their thinking, beliefs, and what do we call those? Thinking errors. So that part of it is going to vary depending on the age of the child and the model that you're using. The reality, though, is if you've done your case conceptualization and you've kind of figured out the problem, then you kind of already know what are some things that might come up along the way. So, for example, if I'm working with a child who's experienced trauma, and let's say sexual trauma, then I know there are going to be some thinking errors, some mistaken beliefs about feeling like it's their fault, or feeling like I call it got slimed, feeling like they're kind of used goods. I know those are going to come up. So I'm going to kind of conceptualize that in the process of the model that I'm using, and I'm going to use that to kind of figure out where that's going to come up in the play therapy process. And those tests, right? We have children test the limits in play therapy. That's a very popular topic in the play therapy arena, especially depending on what theory model you're using. Can I set limits? How do I set limits? My client is doing this. Do I have to allow that? I don't really like that. What does that mean when they do that? This worries me a little when they do that. How do I handle that? So we know our clients will test in the process. And then also those core beliefs about what's their level of awareness for what they need to accomplish. Now, that's going to vary based on the age of the child for sure. And if you're working with children, you're also working with parents. So part of the work that you're doing with this process is figuring that out for parents as well, and integrating that into the treatment process. How are parents going to be involved? How are you integrating them? What goals are the parents going to be working on? What is that going to be looking like? So you want to make sure to do that as well. And then the thing to keep in mind is a lot of these are core competencies that the Association for Play Therapy has identified. So a lot of what we've gone through today are some foundational skills that are important to develop for being competent, regardless of what play therapy model you're using. So the core competencies that the Association for Play Therapy has identified are things like the use of assessment, understanding child development, understanding the impact of trauma, and understanding system influences on the child. And then these core competencies are also including your theoretical model, being trained in a theoretical model, and how does that get applied through all the stages of play therapy, all the stages of the change process. So that is it for today. I think it's an interesting article that gave us some really good information about some things to think about when we're working with children and when we're doing some of that initial case conceptualization and treatment planning, some things to consider along the process. So I think it's important, one, before we even start the play therapy sessions with kids, I really think it's important, at least depending on the age of the child, at the very least, you're doing that psychosocial assessment with the parents where you're gathering all of the information, and then you're using that for your treatment planning process. I also think that we can't know everything from the very beginning, right? Like, I think those first 90 days, as we're working with children and we're getting to know parents, are going to give a little more depth to that initial case conceptualization and give us a better idea of what things would look like. And the things they discussed in the article are really good things to think about over that process and kind of figuring out and making sure when these things come up, how are you addressing it in the treatment process? So that is it for today. Um, just a recap, which is what's the best way to help clients heal. Play therapists can best help their clients by making sure, really in the beginning, to gather all of that information before you start on the play therapy session so that you can figure out what the problem is and why is it happening. And this step is missed a lot, mostly because play therapists want to get started helping their clients right away. And I think they don't necessarily understand the importance of doing that initial case conceptualization and how that influences your treatment planning. Because even when you get stuck somewhere along the way in the treatment process, which all of us do, then we always can go back to that case conceptualization and kind of get reoriented. And then the authors in this article, they propose this plan formulation method, and they really walk you through some things to consider when you're looking and figuring out what treatment approach might be best for your client. So you're thinking about all these things, how they might help your client. And also, I think just kind of your treatment planning overall gives you an idea, maybe some things you want to make sure to work on as well. So it's both that making sure that you're meeting your client's individual needs in play therapy, and also part of that process is that case conceptualization and treatment planning process. And then for play therapists, really, I think about play therapy. It's not all or nothing in terms of it has to be relational the whole way and I can't do anything strategic or symptom focused, or the case conceptualization, I have to get started right away. And I don't think that's the case, because if you think about it, even the more psychodynamic or humanistic treatment approaches, they're strategic. And what I know some of you are like, I don't know about that, Cathi Spooner. And here's what I mean by that. They're strategic in that there's a theory, there's a way that you apply the theory, and there are different stages of treatment, and how are you applying the theory in each of those different stages of treatment. And that's going to vary depending on your play therapy model. It's still strategic in nature, though. It's not like there isn't any strategy. There is. And we know that because there's a theory. We know that because we're looking at different things in each stage of the treatment process. And how do you respond? So when we're thinking about our clients and what they need, and making sure we do that initial case conceptualization and treatment planning, that's also going to help us figure out what's the best way to help our clients. And I would say this also includes, let's just say you are a big fan of child-centered play therapy, and that's my foundational training. Like, my default has always been child-centered. I'm strategically thinking about, how am I engaging parents? I'm going to be meeting with parents. How often am I meeting with parents? What are the issues that I need to be working on in the play therapy with parents? What's the parents' awareness of the things that are creating challenges that need to be addressed? So I'm thinking about all of these things, and you're also thinking about that in terms of what's your approach, what treatment model are you using, or within your model, you're still making decisions about, okay, who's going to be involved in the treatment process? Why are they going to be involved in the treatment process? And how are parents going to be involved? So we're thinking about all these things. All righty. So that is it for today. If you're interested in Play Therapy Academy is what I call, it's kind of like a VIP approach, I think, to learning how to competently use play therapy so that you feel confident and you don't feel like a big giant fraud. There's tons of support. We meet twice a month for virtual consultation meetings. There are courses, online self-paced courses, the case conceptualization and treatment planning course. There's a progress note course in there. There's foundational play therapy course in there. I'm about to launch the parents course, working with parents. That'll be in there. It'll be available for people who don't need Play Therapy Academy as well. All of these courses are available. If you don't need the Play Therapy program, the Play Therapy Academy, you can buy the courses separately. But if you're interested in Play Therapy Academy, and in addition to the meetings, twice a month meetings and the courses, there's a group chat, lots of support from your peers, and some other kind of bonuses. If you're interested in that, then pop over to my website at rhplaytherapytraining.com. If you're interested in the courses, go over to the courses page. If you're interested in Play Therapy Academy, go over to the supervision page. We'll post a link in the comments. If you're interested, then go ahead and schedule a free 30-minute consultation with me. It's a virtual call. We'll talk about Play Therapy Academy and how it can help you. Right now, I have 4 openings between the 2 programs. There's a Saturday group and a Wednesday group, and they're probably going to go fast. So you probably don't want to wait. If you are interested, I'll have a wait list after that for those people who are interested. But go ahead and schedule that 30-minute call with me, and we will see how Play Therapy Academy can help you. And I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I hope you found the discussion valuable and gained new insights and ideas to support your work helping children, adolescents, and families heal. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps to improve and reach more people who can benefit from this information. Remember, play therapy is a powerful tool for healing and growth. Whether you're a new play therapist or experienced, I encourage you to continue your learning journey to unlock the potential of play in your own work and relationships. If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training to stay updated on upcoming episodes, trainings, and resources. Thank you once again for listening to Next Level Play Therapy. Until next time, keep playing, learning, and growing.